So they've got a great message in the beginning of reach. We've got tremendous reach. So we decided to get together and take their message and pass it on to the big reach that we have as a whole, and really just kind of educate the industry and hopefully reduce trafficking as a whole.
Starting off, Trucker Path recently added a new feature to one of its apps, or to its app. Talk to me about what that is.
Yeah, the most recent addition from an industry perspective is our partnership with Truckers Against Trafficking. It really boils down to we wanted to work with that organization to really extend their cause and put it in front of our audience.
And where did the idea for this come from?
That's a heck of a good question. It kind of just came up organically. Actually, I think yeah, really just through conversations. We about a little over a year ago, announced a relationship with the Women in Motion Council at ATA, and I think that was kind of the beginning of this next conversation we've had with TAT.
And talk to me a little bit about that partnership and kind of how it's grown over the years.
With TAT,
Hmm.
yeah, like I said, really, it's all about us really just extending the reach. They've got a really nice app in place that if somebody suspects they see human trafficking, they're able to open the TAT app, touch on a report feature, which based upon wherever they are when they do that, it shows the hotline, the phone numbers, the people that you need to call to report suspected trafficking. So that's a pretty nice tool, really good tool if somebody really suspects something and needs to report it. But they have a little bit less reach than we do with our app. We've got a little over 1 million active users, so about a third of the drivers in the long haul drivers industry use Trucker Path regularly. So they've got a great message in the beginning of reach. We've got tremendous reach, so we decided to get together and take their message and pass it on to the big reach that we have as a whole, and really just kind of educate the industry and hopefully reduce trafficking as a whole.
And talk to me a little bit about what the Trucker Path app has right now.
I think the easiest way to think about it is if you take Yelp and Waze and put them together specifically for truckers. On the Yelp side, lots of ratings and reviews from over 500,000 points of interest, most of which were cultivated through suggestions from the truckers themselves. And then probably the most important, the most used feature or most relied upon feature that get drivers to start using Trucker Path is our parking availability. We've identified about 20,000 places where trucks can park legally and safely throughout the country, and they're all geo-fenced. So whenever one of our users breaks that geo-fence, we ask them a really easy question. Is the lot full? Are there some spaces available? Are there a lot of spaces available? Which is kind of a vanilla question unless you have 1 million people answering it. Then you start to get really good information. So what happens very, very commonly is one driver will say, geez, I had a hard time finding parking. Driver B says, you should check out Trucker Path. They look, they'll see on the map that, pick a truck stop, the Loves in Tulsa, Arizona. 3 minutes ago, a fellow driver said there were a lot of spots available. So that driver goes there, they show up, and when there's a lot of spots available, they're hooked. They're in the game. They understand that we're really a community facilitating these types of conversations. So then it just grows from there. We do similar things around way stations, shipping docks. Is there a gate? Is it guarded? Do you need an appointment? Are there restrooms? Can you park there, etc.? So it all comes together. I often joke, and I do interviews like this, that Trucker Pass should have been called Hooking a Brother Up, because that's kind of what we do, is just facilitate the conversation amongst the drivers who tend to help each other out quite a bit as it is.
And kind of in relation to having that feature of being able to contact authorities about suspicious activity. Just talk to me about how truck drivers, I mean, they really are on the front lines of witnessing this with being all around the country and different truck stops.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 1 million sets of eyeballs all over the country all the time is quite a wide network. So educating them on obviously the problems with trafficking, and then also what to look for and what to report and to whom is all really important. So the first step was just making the to whom information available within our app, similar to TAT's app. But we're injecting also that educational element as well to kind of educate or teach the drivers on what to look for, and what is it that you should kind of sniff out when you suspect something might be kind of going wrong.
Now, through this process, I'm curious, what have you learned that you didn't know before working with TAT?
I would kind of lump the Women in Motion group and TAT together, kind of for me personally, an experience over the last year. I've been in the industry for quite a long time, longer than I care to admit, probably. And I always knew that there were issues, but to really to speak to to women who have been drivers for 20 years and really understand where they're coming from, not from an academic perspective, but from a true conversation perspective, has been really neat. I've really enjoyed the enthusiasm from the group as a whole, and how much they've really appreciated the fact that we've done what we can to make the road a little bit safer for women drivers. And then on the TAT side as well, I mean, obviously nobody wants trafficking to even exist, let alone be a major problem. We need a very capable organization trying to help thwart. So really for me, it's kind of taking it from the academic to the reality side, and hearing, actual stories, and stories not only of problems, but then also good stories where, somebody recognized an issue and reported it appropriately and understood the information they needed to have to make that report. And the person's life was changed for obviously for the better. So, it's really just cool to take it from an academic level to a reality level.
What is your message to truck drivers who have the Trucker Path app and, cover a lot of ground? And if maybe they do see something suspicious, what's your message to them?
Don't be shy, which usually isn't a problem, but don't be shy. If something seems off, it should be reported. And even if you're wrong, it's better to be safe than sorry. This is one of those topics where it's better to be safe than sorry. So to be educated, understand what you're looking for and what you see, and then do what you can to help. And I think anybody who's at the point where they're looking for who do I call or reach out to is in the right mindset. They want to help, and I really believe that our truck drivers in America, aside from all the things that we hear every day about being essential, it's a good group of people who make our country run. And to be able to facilitate a conversation amongst them that helps with trafficking and with women's safety and finding parking and efficiency and everything, it's really what gets my juices flowing about being here at Trucker Path. I like the business. I like to grow technology companies, but at the same time, when we're working directly with drivers and making their life easier and more efficient, and then helping the greater community as a whole, it's just a great thing.
Starting off, for those who aren't familiar, what is Truckers Against Trafficking, or TAT as it's typically referred to?
Yeah, TAT is a 501c3 international nonprofit organization that's really seeking to raise up a mobile army of transportation professionals and beyond to recognize and report the crime of human trafficking all across North America. And in that reporting, helping to aid in the recovery of victims and the arrest of their perpetrators. So we provide industry-specific training at no cost to our partners that's easily included as a part of new hire orientation or regular safety training for those companies, or for individual owner-operators if they want to access our stuff. We have a venue for that as well. But essentially, we're just trying to get everyone in the industry and in the industries that we serve, which includes the bus industry, motor coach, transit, school bus drivers, the energy industry, law enforcement, government agencies, anybody that we can, honestly, to recognize that we all have a role to play in combating human trafficking across our countries.
And why is it so important, especially anyone in transportation, but especially truck drivers, that they be informed and educated?
Truckers are the eyes and ears of our nation's highways. I mean, they are everywhere, right? At any given time, there are more truck drivers over the road than there are law enforcement officers. And so we recognize that truck drivers are in places, unfortunately, where they may come into contact with victims, because the traffickers, those victimizing these human trafficking victims, recognize that there's an unfortunate market for what they're selling, right? So truck drivers may find themselves intersecting with victims at rest areas, truck stops, hotels, motels, city streets, places of business, local communities for those local drivers, just truly anywhere. And if they are if they're trained to recognize those red flags, and to just take that second look, immediately report what they're seeing, we're finding that this is leading to the discovery and disruption of human trafficking networks, and ultimately changing and saving lives. one thing that I would love to add is, I work with a number of drivers in many capacities and have over my time at TAT. And it's just interesting to hear them talk about as they come into their own ownership of this work and just really sort of get excited about the cause. They've told me, we're trained to read all of the signs, right? As we're going down the highways, mile markers, exits, all these things. Why wouldn't we be trained to recognize the nuances of this crime and be in a position to help, make a phone call, which is all we're asking folks to do.
And I'm sure you hear this a lot. People think, well, that probably, sex trafficking doesn't happen here in the US. How much of an issue is it in the US?
It is. Unfortunately, this crime has been found in every state in the US, every province in Canada. I mean, truly, from a global perspective, even though there are crimes against modern slavery and human trafficking in every single nation across our world, we know, unfortunately, that this crime is taking place in every single place. We're talking about inner city, rural towns, suburbia, gated communities, places that have issues of poverty, as well as the other end of the spectrum, just, some of the most ritzy and affluent areas. This crime truly knows no racial, gender, or socioeconomic bounds when it comes to not only who could be the victims, but also the traffickers.
Now, Trucker Path will soon add the TAT report feature on its app. Tell me how that all came about.
Yeah, so that actually was a connection from a mutual partner. So American Trucking Associations and their Women in Motion initiative, they came to us and said, hey, we'd love to bring TAT into a conversation with Trucker Path. We've enjoyed our partnership, and we think that there might be some synergy here, and just having a discussion to see what might come about as a relationship. And so we took a call earlier this summer and just ideated on a number of different things, and ultimately it was Trucker Path's idea to say, hey, could we consider including this report feature of the TAT app into our own platform? And it's something new for us, but it was exciting to think about. I think Trucker Path says that they have over 1 million users a month, which is astronomical and such a great reach. And so it just made sense to try to see what we could do and get this information out to the people using their app.
And can you explain to me what the report feature does?
Yes, so the report feature includes a geolocated set of phone numbers, essentially. So no matter where you are in the country, if you pull up the TAT app, which some of this is being moved over to Trucker Path, you are able to see the best reporting numbers given your specific location. So there are not localized human trafficking hotline numbers in every state. Unfortunately, it's a growing trend and option, but TAT has identified a series of numbers, whether they are state, local, regionalized hotlines, as well as the National Human Trafficking Hotline and 911 that will come up depending on where that user is located, and you are then able to click to report or make a phone call to those hotlines or 911.
And what are some of the signs that someone might see at a truck stop that could be suspicious?
Yeah, so if you see, really the two most obvious signs that we try to train on are anytime you see a minor that you believe is engaged in commercial sex, or anytime you believe you're witnessing someone under the control of a pimp, regardless of the age or gender, not only of that victim, but also that suspected trafficker. If you see someone going from truck to truck, knocking on cab doors, if you see someone that is not dressed appropriately for the weather or time of day, if you see someone that looks like they're being controlled by someone else, if you see a vehicle pull into could be a rest area, could be a truck stop, could be a city street. If you see a vehicle pull in and multiple women and girls, although this crime affects boys and men as well, but you see multiple people getting out of a vehicle and it seems like they're then going to solicit. Those are major red flags that this could be a human trafficking situation. Does it mean that it always is? No, but at that point, what we're asking is for those folks, those drivers or any of us, just to take that second look, to slow down and to say, okay, the hairs on the back of my neck might be standing up, right? I'm witnessing something that doesn't seem quite right. Let me just take another look and see if there are any other red flags that may indicate that this is human trafficking and that I should make that phone call right away.
Yeah, I was curious, what do you say to a truck driver that might be listening and they're thinking, well, like that kind of looks suspicious, but I don't want to make a big deal out of it. I don't want to, if they have to call 911 or what do you say to them?
First, I would say download the TAT app because there are a number of red flags specific to different sectors and industries that you can scroll through. There's even a search feature that you could start to type in maybe what you're seeing, and then some red flags that are associated with that will pull up, and you can review. Okay, does this match with what some of these red flags are? Is this really looking like it might be human trafficking? But what I would say, and our law enforcement partners would back us up on this as well, just call. It is better to call and be wrong than not to call. What if you are that one person that notices and is in that right place at the right time? You can be anonymous, you can remain confidential. I think, if it were for your son or daughter, or your niece or nephew, or someone that you know, a sister, a brother, I think we would all want somebody to make that call on behalf of our friend or loved one. And so I would just encourage you to overcome that fear. And, I think in our world today, we all get so sucked into our devices, right? We're all sort of like head down in our own world. We don't want to we don't want to get involved in stuff a lot of times. But what we're trying to encourage drivers and everyone else is just to really understand that we all have a role to play, and thinking about that bystander intervention effect, which is combating the bystander effect, thinking that, okay, if there's 10 people that are witnessing a crime, 9 of them are probably going to say, oh, someone else will call that in, someone else will get involved. That's not for me. No, it is for you. You might be the one person that could be the difference between that person continuing to be exploited or being able to obtain freedom.
And I know I've heard of a couple stories. Do you have any that you can just kind of briefly go over of times that a truck driver did call, and it did end well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think of some of our Harriet Tubman Award winners, which if you want to read those stories, check out our website. We have a number of TAT in action cases that you can review and sort of see this work in action. But I think of Joe Aguayo. He was a driver that found himself in a mountainous location on his route. He actually didn't have cell phone service. He knew he wouldn't have cell phone service for several hours, but this was a route that he would typically take. He came around a curve and saw a woman standing on the side of the highway, looking up, staring up into the mountains, wrapped only in a beach towel. Her head was shaved. And at the time, Joe was unable to stop in that moment, but he kept going because he knew that there was a police call box that was just a few minutes down the road. He got up to that call box. He picked up the phone. He said, hey, I just saw something very suspicious, something strange. Please send somebody out to help this woman. And the person on the other end of the phone said, absolutely, we'll check it out. Joe continued on his way, never really knew what happened until a few months later when Joe unfortunately had a weather-related accident. The trooper that was helping him at the time, they started to have a conversation. Joe said, hey, whatever happened to that woman, from this same area a couple months ago? I made a call about somebody at the side of the highway. And the trooper said, that was you that made the call? And the trooper ended up being the one that responded to that scene, recovered that woman, who ended up being a 27-year-old Indigenous woman from about 4 hours away. She had been dumped there by her traffickers. She had been drugged. She was malnourished. She was incredibly hurt. In fact, the nature of her wounds, the trooper said, took his breath away. But he was able to get her to a local hospital where she was, set up with a caseworker. And for confidentiality reasons, we don't know what happened after that. But the point is, in that moment, Joe's call, Joe's attention to detail, and just willingness to do something truly saved that woman's life. So we have all kinds of stories like that of drivers, again, just being in the right place at the right time and being willing to make a phone call. That's one thing I want to stress. We're not asking drivers to be Batman or Superman, although I totally think you all are amazing. But just make a call from the safety and anonymity of your cab or wherever you end up finding yourself. We don't need you to intervene. We don't need you to try to recover these victims yourself. It's not only not safe for you, it's not safe for those victims. But the power of a phone call is truly remarkable. And we know, thanks to Truckers Calls, thousands of victims have been identified and recovered. And we know that there are so many more opportunities for the men and women of the trucking industry to be a part of this.